Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Northern Arizona Witches Podcast, episode 3. I'm really excited today because we have a guest. Her name is Anya, and she is a local author of the Angel Wears Prana. So welcome, Anya.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. I was looking at your website, and you have a lot of interesting stories, it seems like, and a really interesting, colorful history.
Yes.
And an author. That's so exciting. Can you tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I have always been in the health and wellness industry. I went to college, but right after, like towards the end of it, I wasn't doing well. I was really stressed and I had these strong feelings that I should go to massage school, but I was already working at a Walt Disney World spa as a manicurist, pedicurist, that kind of thing. So, as some of my coworkers were going out, or coworkers, colleagues were going out into jobs and law school, I went to massage school. I didn't know at the time, but that was me starting my spiritual path. I even questioned if I was an atheist back in the day because I didn't, like the religion that I was brought up in. I wasn't participating, didn't feel that I was called to continue to participate in that. And then long story short, got married and ended up being later on. I did massage for 25 plus years while I was raising my kids. Got divorced, became a professional wellness coach, and I learned incredible amounts of information about other people and psychology and things like that. And then right around the end of me working at this big insurance company as a wellness coach, I met a woman at my son's baseball team who wanted to go see a psychic. And I was like, I really want to do that. And it was right around the time that I was getting feelings that I should write a book, but I had no idea what to write it about because I'm like, what do I know? You know what I mean? Like, I know stuff, but probably not stuff that other people don't know. But then I went to the psychic, and at the very end, she looked at me with these eyes and she goes, "You're going to help a lot of people." And it was like a flash of, I can't mess around anymore. I have to write this book.
Powerful. That's so
It
powerful.
was
I think every time when you imagine going to a psychic, you want that kind of epiphany moment to happen. The first time I went to an outside psychic, it was not like that. I felt like she was reading someone else who was like a few doors down because it had nothing to do with me. So I'm excited
could
for
have
that
been.
epiphany moment.
It was amazing. I mean, the whole reading was good, but towards the end, it was just like I could almost see into her eyes to see the picture that she was seeing. And so I wrote the book. I thought something was going to happen with it. I started marketing it. Had to write it, edit it, self-publish the whole thing, then did the website. And, I got the feeling that it was kind of a big deal. Like this was going to be, you know, an income generating thing. But as any wise woman who has strong powers needs an initiation. So I went on a really long spiritual path, and that all factors into having a Kundalini awakening and the idea of clearing your vessel, spiritual stuff that I don't feel the religious part, but they talk about this process in all major religions. So it's nothing against religion. It's just I have my own unique path and I don't judge anybody else's spiritual beliefs. What you have spiritually, we're all trying to head for the same place. We all want to get to heaven, so no need to argue with other people about their beliefs, in my opinion.
I've told people whatever interpretation works best for you and whatever feels the most in tune and in alignment with who you are, whether that be Christianity, Buddhism, being a yogi, doing, Hindu, all different sorts of paths lead to enlightenment.
Yep, absolutely. And some people get there without any spiritual process. It's something that happens in a physical thing or some event in their life. Everybody realizes a similar thing in amazing different ways.
And the world of publishing is I've done some some research on this lately, and it is completely different than what I envisioned as a child. And you get discovered and published, and then you're this amazing, successful J.K. Rowling level bestseller author. Nowadays, you have to generate your own following before you get picked up by a publishing company. You have to publish it yourself, all sorts of things.
Yeah, and my only concern is that right now with social media and media, some of the people that are getting the most attention aren't being authentic. And that just, I feel, is misleading other people about what's possible or how things work. Or, I don't want to go up there and say things that aren't true. I don't want that.
I think there's going to be premium pay in the future for authenticity because we're currently in a realm where it's so hard to tell what's real. And AI is one factor in that, but the other factor is also just real people trying to sell you something or clickbait or doing things just for views. And it's kind of surreal to live in a world where just your attention feeds energy into that person and thing. So even paying attention is a suck on your energy. So
Yeah,
I think
and
authenticity is so important.
yeah, and the number of screens that everybody's looking at, it's just so sad. They're everywhere, like in stores and like stuff we don't need. This is pulling people away from natural interactions with each other. I've noticed since the pandemic that people don't even want to look at each other, interact with each other, say hello. It's like everybody is so private now and it's hurting us. It's
It is.
so concerning. It's very sad.
I went to lunch with my husband the other day, and we've all been out to lunch or dinner and seen families or couples sitting there, on their phones. And I try to limit my judgment and realize that there's been times where my husband and I are on each other's phones and we're working on the same project together. We're looking up ideas, and I'm like, here, look at this, like, can we do it this way? So it's not always ignoring each other. But the other day, I
Right.
saw a family sitting there, and there were three kids laying on the booth benches, and they all were buried in their phones. And the mom was sitting there just staring off. And maybe she needed a break, and maybe she needed a moment to herself. There's always that. But I was looking at that and I was thinking, like, someone talk to her, someone interact with her. She's just sitting there where all three kids are engrossed in their phones.
It's so true. But on the other hand, I have 3 children, and at that age, it was hard, to get them to sit still and be in public and, but it is just I don't really blame the parents because parenting is difficult. It's just this stuff has taken over our lives, and if you really want to, get your family together and connected, you're gonna have to have your own screen time limits, and that's what I've done for my life. Once my kids are past a certain age, they pay for their own phone bills and they can do what they want. And my parenting journey with them was over at that 18-year-old age. So I did the best, and I'm just thankful that that wasn't a huge deal. When it first came out and the schools were giving out devices, I'm like, this is trouble. And then they let us
I
keep
have
the devices over summer, and I was like, why are you taking these things back?
That's crazy. I have two stepchildren as well, and they had smartphones. I didn't have smartphones at that age, but they did, and it was definitely a constant conversation. And there were days where everybody was on their phone at dinner, and or we were watching TV at dinner, but there was those moments that we had to carve out specifically to say, "We're sitting at the table, we're having a conversation." Like, no devices whatsoever, but it took extra effort.
Really does, truly.
So tell me about your book and what it talks about in that book.
I had a really difficult divorce, and I didn't know what an empath and a narcissist was. So I went through that whole journey of learning how an empath and a narcissist end up in a relationship. And as however painful it was, I took years to figure out that it is for my own spiritual and soul education, is when you finally can get into that pain and realize why that happened to you and stop blaming your partner and understanding, that on a deep, deep spiritual level, this was a lesson, like a lot of tough life circumstances are. And I'm not saying this, I just had to realize it was a lesson. No, it was years of pain, years and years and years and years of pain. But that's how witches find their power. If we were all brought up in a way where spiritual women had regular rites of passage, had wise elders to teach them things, we had a process like indigenous cultures, we wouldn't have to go through these things. But that has been destroyed through decades and decades and decades. So
It feels like we're just kind of flailing out there on our own, and we either land in a spot where we kind of start to get seeds of understanding and then we can start to discover, or we end up being lost and repeating our lessons over and over, and you hope to become part of the awakening of where you can realize where that lesson has been repeating, maybe not just in this life, but in many lives. And sometimes you feel it on that soul deep level. Like I've been in this situation before on multiple lives. And I think I
yes,
just started to heal it. And that's a full body chill, like excitement, awakening moment.
yeah. I had a spiritual awakening several years after the book, and what I was told in my spiritual awakening was almost unbelievable. I would not believe it if someone just told me the story. I had to go through the experience. It wasn't a near death experience, but it produced a result like that, where I had to completely look at my life totally different. I had to go through a series of difficult tasks to, basically, I'm healing the ancestral trauma in my life. And, this isn't something that the average person around me gets what this is. So it's been pretty tough, but I've learned a lot. I've put a lot of rituals, and a lot of this spiritual witchiness is really, if you really get down to the core of it, it is seeking the divine self, clearing your body to be able to detect subtle energies and use them to your advantage, is understanding how you use your intention. If and I'm very feel very strongly about this, we do not need to hurt other people to get what we need. We need to learn cord cutting and boundaries and how to manage ourselves. Your ego is the one that wants to punish someone else. If you really knew the laws, you just ask for that person to be removed from your space, and their higher self will take care of their lessons. I guess that's the number one thing for witches, because some people think witchy, ooh, what can I do to other people? This is not about other people. It's about you.
It's very confusing, and I don't know if you listened to the last episode where I had conversation with the new witch, but the amount of, and again, it's kind of clickbait, but the hexing and the putting intentions out there of, I don't know, hex the patriarchy and all of these things. It's very confusing for someone who's on the beginning of their journey and really realizing that their own, and I always call it like muddy energy. Their own muddy energy is going to kind of take care of that for themselves. Your best thing to do is just to make sure you don't get dirty in the process.
People need to realize that karma is a real thing. And if you're doing that to other people in situations where you shouldn't be, that's going to come back to you one way or another. I would advise
I
not doing
agree.
that. I would advise seeking your inner self or talking to someone who knows more than you about how you can resolve this without making it worse for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% back that statement. Please, before you think about doing any negative intentions towards anyone, even to the extreme of just having negative thoughts towards that person, please check yourself before you wreck yourself because that stuff does circle around. And if we are looking at energy in the level of understanding that even the words that we speak are constantly casting into our energetic future, that if
Yes.
you're not checking yourself, you're speaking what is going to happen next. Spelling.
And clearing your own energy in the day and time like what we're experiencing now with all the negativity going, it's a daily thing. It's a daily thing. I really want to promote some sort of energy clearing meditation, whatever you call it. We don't need to argue about what the thing is called. Whether you're grounding barefoot, whether you're using the sunshine, whether you use water. If you want to be a witch and start doing some powerful things, you need to learn your own energy first, and that'll take a while. And all the witchy tools are fun, but they're not the basis of it. They're just tools. Some people go way out of hand buying too many things. Back in the day, witches just used leaves and natural stuff they found outside. So, I like tools too, but in the end, they're just a little bit. Some things I use on a daily basis is a smudge or a sage. I work with essential oils. I've had a lot of success with that. Candle magic. Number one, if anyone wants to do one thing for themselves for their witchy practice, it is personal protection because there's a lot of energy negative that's trying to hurt. If you have a lot of power, they say your light triggers other people's demons. You got to learn how to deal with that. You got
I
to learn
wish
what's
I'm
yours,
gonna
what's
say
somebody
amen.
else's.
Praise that. Amen. Absolutely. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but with the level of exposure from screens and media and propaganda and even like influencer stuff, like you should be this way, you're doing this wrong, like constantly, it's so easy to go from I'm protected to this to sucked in. And all of a sudden, you're like, I forgot my protection. And now I am on a morning routine rabbit hole where I've realized that I've been doing mornings wrong. And now you have this negative energy towards yourself. And I'm doing the process of waking up completely wrong. And something like that criticism leaks its way into your life.
I'd like to remind people that once you fall asleep, you cross the veil. That's why you have dreams and go into your subconscious. So when you go back and forth and cross every day, that's why they call it a morning because you went back to a higher place when you were sleeping. You need to remember you came back and do your clearing and get back into your body. And stuff happens overnight. That's part of the growth process on the subconscious level. People are starting to realize that their external world can be resolved by resolving some stuff in your subconscious. That's what all these teachers and Tony Robbins and Dispenza are all trying to tell us that you can resolve outside problems with subconscious and inner training.
Really like both of them. I really like Dispenza. I just did one of Dispenza's walking meditations, which I find super helpful to be walking in your new self and your future self. And I find that having something physically to focus on during meditation is super helpful. What's a way that you go ahead?
Everybody's inner world works differently. Everybody's senses are set up differently. There's a lot of people out there going, this isn't how it works and that how it works. You have to figure it out for yourself. I am also somebody who I like that level of distraction while I'm feeling this. So for me, when I'm driving, it works because I'm just busy enough with part of my brain driving where the other information comes into me. It's taken years for me to learn meditation techniques where I can not be driving or doing something else, but that took a long time. You know, sometimes mine just pops. I mean, I get some really amazing synchronicities. I post them on my Instagram. Stuff I was thinking about yesterday, and it'll literally pop into my physical world. And I'm like, what did I just see? I can't believe it sometimes. People read my energy and they can read what I'm thinking that I haven't told them. I'm like, what did that person just say?
Blows my mind when that happens.
Yeah,
The
it's
other
great.
day, I was telling my husband, I said, "It's a mirror day or a balance day." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Anytime anything is mentioned in my day today, there has been a counterweight to that that it gets brought up again." So a friend of mine sent me a picture of a Norse goddess that she is really diving deep in research on. And then my husband brings up the mythology of Norse giants later. So it was just like I was
Yep.
constantly getting this ping pong effect of like, oh,
Yes.
444. And
Yes.
then later it then it's on my timer on something I'm doing, and I look at it right at 444, and it's little stuff, but it adds up.
Uh, and that is to encourage you to say that you're coming into alignment with that vibe, kind of giving you some feedback, but the amount of excitement you have inside the level will also encourage that to keep coming to you. So it's almost like, I like that feeling. Show me that again.
And one thing is becoming so comfortable with your own excitement because it doesn't matter who I tell, they'll never be as excited as I am about it. And you're like,
Yes.
"Okay, so you saw a rabbit in the morning and then you saw a rabbit t-shirt at the store, like big deal." And you're like, "No, it is a big deal. I'm so stoked about this. It's
Yeah,
happening."
they didn't get that energetic impulse or hit inside like you did.
Right. And I find that that was a major issue for me in meditation was constantly undermining my own authority with the meditation is constantly thinking that I was doing it wrong or I was visualizing it wrong or I probably wasn't should I visualize it from my body or should I step outside of my body and look at myself and I'm like looking up all these things and everybody kept telling me you're not wrong. It's just how you visualize
Right.
it, but something in me kept saying, "No, you're not doing this right."
There's many ways to do it. You were just experimenting with all the different ways and just trying to develop a proficiency. That's it.
It's, uh, it was one of my major hurdles in not discrediting myself and my own feelings and realizing that, those shadows I see in the corners of my eyes aren't always logical reasons and that I can validate that I am seeing things passing by, whether it's another timeline, another dimension, or spirit. But
Mhm.
constantly discrediting myself was my favorite thing to do.
Well, we live in a society that never reinforced the women's power, the women's sight. We didn't grow up being encouraged to pay attention to this. And this is why we're going through it now, because it has to be done. And this is what we're here for, to learn this stuff and use it and wake up other people and encourage them to use their power. There's a reason they were afraid of witches, because it worked.
And there's so much coming out about that, whether it's the way our calendar is structured, the way our week is structured, the way even our work days are structured based on men's time clock and how women have just forced themselves to kind of fit into that mold and keep up with that instead of being celebrated for what we bring to the table. And not that it's different or less, but it's just as powerful adjacent to that energy.
Absolutely.
And I've seen so much about that lately, and it makes me really excited that people are awakening to that. And it makes me excited to
I think
learn more.
women have known this for a long time. It's just we haven't really had a chance to move forward in it more. We've always been trying to get what we deserve and fighting for our rights. But the thing that I don't think an average person understands is right now we are in a stage of awakening that is full steam ahead. This drama's never going to stop. There is a purpose for all this stuff happening. And it is for all of us to learn more spiritually. If you are alive on this planet now, you had to be doing something special to get incarnated on this planet at this time. Like, it's painful, but we all wanted it because it's a very, very unique experience. And it's not going to stop. So we have to start taking control of ourselves. We are in the rise of the divine feminine. So spiritually, women are being energetically given more power. This is nothing new. If you study any old texts of religion or spirituality, this has been prophesized forever. It's just we have lived a life for so long where not a lot happened. And then 5 years ago, it all started. And it takes time for people to understand that stuff you learned in church. Look at it. It's actually really, really happening now.
Think I lost you for just a second, so I'm gonna just wait for it to catch up. So 5 years ago, now, what would you say the biggest trigger point for the mass amount of people who are spiritual awakening? Was it the age of Aquarius that we just entered into? I know we've had some Lionsgate portals. Astrology is not my strong point, but
Right.
what would you, in your opinion, what would you say has triggered such a huge awakening?
I would say, from my perspective, because different perspectives are valid, this was prophesized as the end of one spiritual time frame from Kali Yuga to Sat Yuga. If you look at any of the texts around those, this was prophesized, it was going to happen, it's been happening, and then, of course, the pandemic was honestly really the biggest hello, wake up that we had. I mean, think about the lessons people learned. There's a lot to learn during that, just people stuck in houses with partners that they didn't want to be in, the power that was put over us, people challenging what was legal or right. There was a lot of things that had to be come to the surface for people for them to readjust their own lives. In my opinion, this we don't need to argue about the outside. It is doing what needs to be done on the inside for your soul, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think the thing that has really blown my mind, and I continue to have a lot of revelations with this, but it's just uh the prescribed, and I want to say this the right way, but it's like you have, like, you're playing Sims and you have different character personalities that you can subscribe to, and they lead you down different paths as far as like manipulation goes, and propaganda and algorithms and confirmation bias and all of that. And it seems that people tend to pick one of those and then just subscribe to everything that comes with that package deal.
Yeah,
And that's a
right.
lot of what happened to me during the pandemic. Of what I started to realize is that, you had one side or another, and it was like they believed in one thing, and then they picked up all the other things that seemed to be gift wrapped with that particular set of beliefs. And I kept saying, let's look outside of this. Let's look at all the things, not just one set. And that's where I really started to realize that a level of energetic manipulation that's happening.
Yeah. I, during COVID, ignored the TV, kept it off as much as possible. I went to outside to parks when everyone else was stuck in the house. I got out for walks. I went to public parks. I couldn't believe they even closed the bathrooms. I'm like, really? This is outside. But I just, continued my life as much as possible, not feeding into the hype, doing what was best for me, not arguing with what was best for other people, sat and watched in amazement about what people allowed to happen. But I had enough of my own inner work to keep me occupied to do for myself and my family. And my kids with the in school, out of school. I mean, I can't even believe that we expected children to learn on a screen for that whole year. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, we're going to make them sit in front of the screen, but okay. Just got through it and dealt with my own stuff. And I had plenty to deal with.
It was hard. It was hard to protect your energy in that. And I wish that I could say that I was cool, calm, and collected during the whole thing. I wasn't, and especially when
Yeah.
I started seeing the news, and then I started going down different rabbit holes, and next thing you know, I was, like, waking up anxious to see what the news was that day, and then I was spreading that around to anybody who wanted to talk about it. I was like, "Oh, did you see the new numbers, or did you see this?" And I had to do a hard stop on myself and have my own intervention because I was an anxiety mess about everything.
That is part of the learning process. You kind of, at some point, have to this perfectionism stuff, life is an experience. I truly believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. People forget. We go through a veil of forgetting to come to this planet and be born. So there's things that deep down you know, but you agreed to this veil when you came here to relearn it from a different perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you realize, oh my God, I am spreading chaos. This is not what I want to do. Some of it needs to be done and felt so you know not to do it again. That's just how we learn. Some people don't learn by just being told something. Some people have different, personality characteristics where they have to experience it.
I've always been hard-headed that way, and if you honestly tell me not to do something, there's a good chance that I'm just going to rebel against that just for the sake of rebelling, knowing that I shouldn't put my hand on a hot stove, but I do wanna test it out and make sure you're right first.
That's a valid way to approach something. But it sounds like you've matured enough now to know you're like, "Oh, I've touched enough hot stoves now to start believing in myself and knowing the limits." I mean, I try not to give advice, but if people want advice, I'll give it, but you gotta, like, not be annoyed when they don't take your advice. It might just not be the thing for them. It just might not be the
That
thing.
Yeah, and that was a hard one for me to swallow is, giving advice and being asked for advice and then seeing them not follow it. It was so hard because I would personally become invested in that
Yeah.
person's success, and when I put a bunch of energy and get excited for them, then they don't do it. It's taken me a long time to realize that they're on their own journey and they're on their own path, and they have to discover things the way they need to experience them. So that's a hard one to learn.
When I started watching the spiritual teacher online that had the biggest effect on me was so many years ago, and I just looked at her going, "I know she knows something, and whatever she's saying makes sense, but I don't get it." Do you know how many years of spiritual growth it took me to even get anywhere near the level that of comprehension that she had? Years. Years, years, and a lot of pain.
I was laughing at myself a few years ago because there's all these spiritual catchphrases, right? Like go with the flow, just be, or just breathe. And you see them on t-shirts and stickers. And one day a couple of years ago, I'm like, that's what go with the flow means. I'm literally just gonna, like, surrender to whatever is happening, and you're like, "That's the simplest concept," but it took me forever to actually go with the flow and not just be spouting it, but not truly understanding it.
My favorite one is when in yoga, I did a lot of yoga back in the day, where they'd be like, clear this chakra, clear that chakra. If you have a deep wound in a chakra, there ain't one yoga class that's going to take care of that. That could be a year's worth of internal personal growth to heal that wound. I believe that. I'm like, did I clear it? I went to yoga. No, that's only one level. There's more levels than that.
I'm on a chakra, I don't know if you watch, Gaia. There's a chakra series meditation on there, and I started doing that. And I've absolutely enjoyed, funneling energy into each chakra, maybe spending some time each day. But I know that even after 7 days of working on each one, it takes time. It takes time.
It really does. I wish if I could tell people in general about the chakras are like software. It's hard for us because we didn't grow up in a environment that told us what chakras were, but it's like software inside your body is what it is. There's a thing like a spiritual download. You can download energy into that software of that particular chakra. I mean, we're already
I'm
doing
like,
it, we just don't know. You have to, like it takes time to develop the field that's happening, and now I can feel different chakras being activated, but it was happening all the time, I just couldn't
and
discern
you
it.
take hits in different spots and you don't realize it. You'll have, like, I've had a sudden lower back pain, and I've never had lower back pain before, and now it's getting knotted up. And I know something is probably happening with my root chakra. or my sacral chakra, but I keep having this pain, and I know that it's just out of nowhere. So it's like you can physically feel it sometimes. Or I could have twisted my back. I think I missed what you said there.
I said it's probably the first one, in my opinion.
The root chakra.
Or sacral. You kinda there's a discernment. You have to sort of self-question and ask your higher self to tell me more about this and what this means to me. You cannot I kind of like I'm real sensitive, so sometimes I demand, like, "What is that?" But that's not really the best way to ask. You're supposed to let it flow in the meditation. Now, you're supposed to be, like, kind and gentle to yourself, like, "Now what might that pain mean to me? What are you trying to tell me?"
I struggle
Like,
with
treat
that
yourself like a
so
toddler.
I struggle with that because I wanna punch that person in the face, that version of me that is like, "Oh, honey," I'm just like, there's the other side of me that's like, "Shut up." So I have to watch how I talk to myself sometimes.
Yep. It doesn't work to yell and demand. You can try, but it usually doesn't work.
I've had to learn to be compassionate to myself, and I think a lot of people have to learn that we're our own harshest critics, and if you're not compassionate to yourself, then how are you going to demand that compassion from everything else that you're interacting with? And
How
that's
are you
like
going to invoke that compassion in someone
Vogue. I
else
love
if
Vogue.
you don't embody it? Because that energetic reflection is actually so much stronger than just saying something.
Yes, I like Invoke. And that's one thing I have been working on so hard because we fall into these habits with our language. And I've fallen on these phrases that are my go-to to say, and breaking that habit has been incredibly hard. But I realized that I had these really negative word patterns that I had just programmed myself to say, and I'm still
Yeah.
constantly working on it. So I like to pause and say, instead of demand, let's invoke. And that's amazing. I like that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I had a lot of stored anger from my trauma, and women are not allowed to be angry. And allowing yourself to be angry and being able to channel that into something that removes it from you, we all got to find that. You want to try to find something where it's a productive letting go of anger, but we're not allowed to be angry. That's not good. It's valid. If that anger is there, that frustration, that's something for a personal thing for you to work through. That's being
It's
kind to yourself, is figuring out your own anger.
Yes, and that avoidance of being perceived in a certain way. I don't wanna be perceived as a bitch. I don't wanna be perceived as high maintenance. I don't wanna be perceived, and then it's like, no matter what you do, you are being perceived in some way, and you can't really control how other people perceive you. You wanna look at how you perceive yourself.
Yes. Because what people need to look at this day and age is psychological projection, because everybody has a lens that they created from being born in their family in the place that they lived, programmed into them about what life is. People always project their view on you. So that's why it's so important for you to do your own inner work. So even when someone's projecting something at you, you know that that's something they created in their mind, not you.
I find that so fascinating how psychology and energetic attunement all work together, and to see when someone is projecting their truth onto the outside world. And I always point this out when I see someone who goes into a situation and it's just very obvious what they're probably projecting, because you can only kind of get your feelings off of it and guess. But when someone is thinking that everyone is against them in the room, you can see how that changes their behavior, or they think that everyone's judging them, or they think no one wants them there. You can see how that bleeds into all of their actions and the way they carry themselves and the way they speak just on their perception of what is happening.
Yeah, and after years and years of working at this and experimenting, I have finally found some divine power where sometimes a certain person will project onto me, and I found a peaceful way to interrupt that without being mean and just showing my strength, where in some cases, it completely changes in a very short time how people treat me. And I it this is n I these YouTube videos and everyone was like, "Oh, just do it like this." No. There was years of personal growth and experimenting and changing my energy so people would act differently around me. I did it for myself. It wasn't to make people treat me differently, but that was a side effect of it. And the stronger and when the change happens, it's more of a positive change. Somehow I'm able to push that projection back onto them and they do something that is a better outcome than originally the way they were treating me. It happens to me all the time. Took a long time.
Do you wanna share that method with us?
Yeah, okay. I'll share an experience because the method isn't the same every time, but I was somewhere where my dog was roaming in a semi-public space, and a woman came out and she had a little dog, and I gently brought my dog up to her dog, and she was like, "Can you and I completely kind of ignored her. And then I started being very pleasant, speaking with her granddaughter, actually connecting with her as a human instead of taking her sort of. I mean, the dogs weren't fighting, they weren't arguing. I was trying to have a peaceful interaction. And then, just took an interest, had a short conversation, and then I went back to where I was sitting. About 20 minutes later, the woman ended up putting a dress on, which I was already wearing a dress. She modeled me. She put a dress on and had like a happier demeanor. Like something in me was like, I didn't say it, but I was like, don't start drama. And she just
That's
on her
great.
own without me saying anything because I was connecting with her, treating her like a person, listening to her, and interacting with her in a pleasant way.
I like it. And it's that authenticity that I think people don't realize they crave so much, and they end up kind of looking up to it in a way of like, you know what? That person is my new idol, or, I want to be more like that in that situation. And sometimes that's how we just start embodying something, or we start creating that next higher version of ourselves, is we see an awesome example of how we want to be going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe she's around a lot of women that do that same thing to her, or she was just programmed with that, or she had a bad day. I don't know. But I wasn't going to put up with that. And if she was like, get away, leave me alone, I would have turned around and, you know, if she wanted space and she wanted me away and told me that, I would have left. So just being respectful and giving it a try. And if she didn't want that, I would have left peacefully. There's all kinds of ways to not get in fights with people. Try it. They work.
I like it. I've been pretty good at avoiding or not avoiding. I tend to, I don't know what it is about my aura, but I tend to not have those situations pop up too much. And when they do, I feel that I have acted similar to how you did, and I'm just able to deflect and bring attention elsewhere, or just try to be myself, because I feel like as soon as I alter my behavior, I give them a bit of power over me. I may just be aware of their own issue, and try to accommodate that to the best of my ability, but not alter my behavior. So
There's a
if
lot of
someone
power in what you just said. Sorry to interrupt you, but it was an
No,
amazing
go
point
ahead.
where you're giving them the space and it's like your eyes are looking like, oh, there's a negativity inside that person. It's almost like you're putting up a little reflection like, did you know that's there? And when you give them that little bit of grace, some of them clue in and realize, gosh, it was me, not her. because they're in their head or wherever.
There's so
That's
much power
maturity.
in silence too. If someone says something shitty to you and instead of reacting y- and defending yourself or blowing up, there's so much power in just letting them sit with that for a moment.
Yeah,
And
try
it's
saying
hard.
when someone's rude to you like that, step back and go, "Are you okay?" You can blow them away when they do that.
Love it. I love it. Are you feeling all
"Are you
right?
okay?"
I love
It'll
that.
work because hardly anyone does that. They're just reacting. And if I've had people be like, and just sometimes they won't even talk. They'll just be like, "Oh God, what would I do?" and just walked away. And I'm like, "Okay, they're just different. Just don't take it
Gonna
on."
try that at the I gotta try that at the grocery store because I feel like that's the place that on the regular triggers me to anger all the time, and it's just people slamming into you with the cart or, um, not realizing that you're there and cutting you off, and next time someone actually physically hits me with a cart, I'm just gonna pause and be like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, let me know. Write me an email. Tell me what happens. I want to know.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you are a wellness coach. That is awesome. How do you mix wellness and witchcraft for anybody?
I mix all of it because I was a wellness coach. I learned a lot about motivational interviewing and how to dig into people's psyches to figure out what was actually bothering them. It's all kind of an energetic art to do it, and I've done it for many years, and I've just learned things that work for me that don't. I've just learned so much. And I do spiritual guidance too. So for people who are doing trauma work, have been told by my higher self that I'm someone people come to when they need to integrate. So when people spiritually learn things, it's one thing like logically, but there's an integration process where you actually embody those lessons. And I seem to have like a charge to encourage that wisdom to be integrated. So you don't have to keep telling yourself the thing, it's there. And I just help
That's
people, especially when they're coming into like what we're doing. When you're coming into the intuition, I start explaining kind of some of the deeper levels and what someone who's a little bit ahead of you experiences. And that makes that I do it in a way to try to rise you up into your own wisdom. So, I mean, I've hired professionals throughout my growth. It's what works for me. Group work doesn't work for me as well. Nothing that it's not bad, it just doesn't work for me. So, I've hired people, and then when I hire people, I can actually feel when I've outgrown them. And one of the coaches that I worked with, we both came to the same conclusion on one day. She's like, I can't read for you anymore. And I'm like, you know what? I felt that same thing. And then we can part without any sort of fight.
I like that. I like that. I have a question onto that. So when you can tell that someone has come to you and you know that they're ready to start very baby steps, start that path towards awakening, how do you plant the seeds, start them on the path without overwhelming them?
Well, usually if they're going to come to me and pay me, they're usually ready to start having assignments or activities. So then I pull from them. I sometimes give a menu of options. You have to go with what the person feels, what they're most interested in, because that's where they have the motivation. So I outline different activities, paths, that they can start taking. It takes time. It takes, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to let that, and then that's why you have several sessions because start confirming. It's hard at first. I start confirming, oh, that's your intuition and that's this and that. Like I kind of like label things so they can, oh, that's what that is. It is kind of like children learning things because we're learning to access our subtle body energies and our intuition again after years of having to live in very logical not patriarch, yeah, patriarch life that's not suited to women. We are just got so used to living this way. You need encouragement because the whole world isn't like this. You can't
And
push people.
validation.
Yeah, validation
Validation.
and explaining, but you can't push people past it. It comes at the level that it does. You can kind of help them discern, and it takes, that time to develop that just proficiency and confidence that that's what you're seeing.
And when you're excited, and I can tell you are, and I am, is like when you start getting onto these subjects of, the Great Awakening and kind of we're living in a simulation, and then understanding timelines and timeline jumping and reading energy, shifting energy, casting into the future. When you have all of these subjects kind of circling around the spiritual world right now, where would you start? Like, what do you think the most important place to understand is? Like, what should you dive into?
I highly recommend the common meditation practice, which there's so many different ways to meditate, but meditation is how you tune into yourself. It is so true that your brain is like a radio receiver, right? And you can tune your brain to different frequencies like different radio stations or different TV channels, okay? So you have to have different types of meditation to have you tune into one frequency and back out of. It's like becoming flexible. It's almost like yoga. You can't just do one yoga pose, you know? You people don't understand. You have past lives of doing these different things in different lives, you know? So you can literally tune into a past life of yourself and the gifts and talents you had in that life. It takes time, but people do it.
That's interesting because I'd like to tap into the past life version of myself that was a yogi.
Yeah.
And even thinking along those lines, because I do yoga on the regular, even thinking along those lines all of a sudden just gives me a surge of confidence and like, you know what? I probably could get to that headstand.
If I were you, I would try it at night or right when you wake up because that's when you're crossing over, into the different realms. You could use a smudge or a essential oil as an activator. And it's this as simple as putting it to your top of your mind and doing your meditation and letting it go from there. Yeah, it's hard to let go of. You're like, I'm so excited, I want to grab onto that. But there's that, you know, holding on and letting go, holding on and letting go. It's a process.
I so agree. And I think there's so many times where I've gotten to a level and I'm like, whoa, I just get it. I just get it and I see it and I feel it and here I am, like, this is the new me. And then a couple of weeks go by and I'm, like, in an old pattern, and I'm like, "Whoa, I deprogrammed that. Where did that come from?"
Because
And
they all
something
travel
pops up
in
that
loops. Think of it as a loop. And every time you come against, it's not about like, oh, I cleared it. Oh, there's that loop again. Oh, wait, I have a new behavior. Bye. It's like a friend that you want to kind of get rid of. You're like, oh, wait, sorry, we're not really friends anymore. We're not a match. I'm moving on. It doesn't have to be mean. You're just like, oh, not productive loop. Bye. I'm going a different loop.
thank you. So in a way, we're constantly shifting between these different timelines, and it's our constant choices in choosing specific energies and frequencies to be in that keep us in alignment. But you don't just go in a wormhole and jump to another timeline and you don't ever have to worry about it again.
Not usually. Not usually. Until
I'm sorry, could you say
Not usually. And if you do, it might have been something that you were working on subconsciously for a really long time. And then it just, spirituality isn't as black and white as we want to think in the logical terms. That's not really how feminine energy flows. But we haven't really had a chance to be very feminine in this man's world. That's why we're relearning it.
I am a huge part or partaking in relearning my feminine energy because I think a huge part of my early 20s, I really prided myself on being in that masculine energy, and I took pride in my masculine parts of me, but I wore it
Yep.
so much that it kind of took over. that feminine side. So I have to undo or
Right.
work through
The
a lot
thing
of that.
There's a lot of immature, toxic masculinity without blaming. Again, there's we're all learning and there's not a lot of it's not trendy to be actually divine masculine. The way the masculinity is set up in a lot of men, it's not conducive for a woman to be extremely feminine. It's just the way the world is right now. So law of attraction, I have had lots of masculine qualities that I didn't know were masculine, like being hyper independent and all the things I do by myself. But I'm different and particular, and I had 3 kids. I don't mind doing things by myself. Like, I'm sure I have gone out for so many meals by myself, like after work. I used to be a massage therapist. And people probably looked at me and like, "Oh, I'm sorry, she's sitting by herself." I'm like, "Are you kidding? I don't have a client. I don't have my husband talking to me. I don't have my kids asking to eat my food. I'm happy."
Being alone sometimes, and when I can challenge myself to be alone in public and enjoy my coffee and read my book, I love those moments. So I totally understand that. I think letting people do things for me that make me feel feminine has been a struggle of, like, allowing yourself to be pampered at times. It's like I got my a pedicure once, and I was so excited for my pedicure, but the lady finally looked up to me and she's like, "You gotta stop trying to help me." Like, "Just let me do your nails. Like, you keep trying to help me do your nails."
Yeah. Yeah, that's a common thing. And if you've been hurt by somebody, or in, trauma or different things happen to you, you tend to be suspicious because sometimes when you let people do things for you, it turns nasty. So you learn that from some way. If you were always treated nice, you wouldn't act like that.
Yeah, and it's identifying where that trauma comes from, and sometimes I think trauma is such a big word, and it makes you think it's, like, a huge impactful moment, but sometimes it can be small things. Like, I don't want the nail lady to talk bad about me and think that I'm lazy, so I'm trying to help her lift my foot and move my foot. So it's like, "Oh, well, that probably comes from having judgmental friends growing up, I don't want them to talk about me later." So it's like
Mhm.
understanding that even sometimes those little things can be shape our personality and our behaviors.
Absolutely. Something comes to mind here. I spoke to a friend. I was listening to myself on some podcast or something I was doing, and I listened really deeply. And I'm like, I have picked up speech patterns from somebody that was a friend of mine for many, many years when I was younger. I'm like, that's become a part of me because we were friends and talked at that particular time in my life. It's still within me. And I was just amazed. I'm like, oh my God, I sound just like my friend, my teenage friend that I spent thousands of hours on the phone with when I was younger.
My
Interesting.
gosh. Yeah, I noticed that with my mom recently. My grandma was living in a tiny house on my mom's property, and I noticed that my mom started doing speech things that were very similar to my grandma that she didn't do before. So I'm just like, "Oh, wow." Like, that's how quick you can start picking up on other people's cadence and the way that they talk and the words they do. I say dude a lot, and all of my friends, not all of them, but some of them have commented and been like, I started saying dude all the time now.
It is sketchy.
My husband has made everyone in my family say absolutely, so now we all say absolutely.
Kind of fun sometimes.
It is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So I was reading about you on your website. So again, the angelwearsprana.com is Anya's website. And I saw a nice little tidbit that you are a psychedelic shaman.
Oh, right. Yep. I have successfully used marijuana in so many journeying um experiences. I take my time with marijuana as sacred. I didn't use it until I was in my 40s when I started to heal. It's how I began connecting deeper with my spirit guides. I use it in particular ways, particular times. I don't use it like out recreationally because I'm aware that that opens me up to things. I always do like an opening and a closing. Very gracious and thankful for what happens during those experiences. And honestly, I don't want to make it sound like it's all sunshine, flowers, and rainbows because what marijuana has helped me do is create a space for me to feel all that pain that I had repressed for so long. It's, you know, people seem to be avoiding difficult topics about pain. I've been to therapy and had coaches and things, but marijuana has let me feel that deep, deep pain that I don't know how else I would be able to feel it. So even when I was used doing MDR with a therapist, she said, normally people get upset and cry during their session. And what happens to you? I'm like, I go home and, you know, I wait till the evening, I'll create a sacred space and have a little marijuana and difficult feelings, painful, painful, difficult feelings, but that was what was moving forward. So um, there's so many people helped by psychedelics in so many ways. There's always going to be people misusing things. And I would just say, there's a lot of strong energy. So if you are going to use psychedelics, read up on it and don't push yourself because once that strong, strong spiritual energy starts to hit you, it will invoke your darkness. Every person has a shadow. Mine was big, so I had a lot of work to do. But those shadows are what you're trying to navigate, so they aren't your shadow anymore.
I
So
like
I just
that a lot.
I just use a lot of respect with psychedelics. It can invoke and stir up stuff in you, and you gotta be ready. So be careful.
Yes, absolutely. And we said something in the beginning, and I can't remember exactly what. It was something about working in that darkness of yourself and exploring your shadow is so important, but also realizing that there is beauty in that darkness and it doesn't need to be completely suppressed. It just wants to be understood and acknowledged and worked through. And I think the shadow work is so important, especially with marijuana, because it does come up and it can come up almost instantaneously sometimes with marijuana. So
When ayahuasca is so popular, and I have not had a firsthand experience with it, but one thing that I intuitively want to tap into and tell people is do not go doing one of these things if you haven't done any of the other work. There is so much work you can do with fasting, with non psychedelics, with reading, with, hiring someone, with doing your own inner work. Don't go jumping over to wherever country, Peru, without doing any of your other inner work. It's a problem. You can purge that stuff for a year. I mean, seriously, if you're going to pay all that money and go to ayahuasca, start a year in advance and start clearing your vessel in other ways because it's safer.
I'm real nervous Nelly about psychedelics, and I do have some acquaintances and friends who are into like plant medicine, like mushroom medicine, psychedelics, and things like that. And I've had full consultations with them, and it's definitely something that you want to build up to. Personally, I would go into it so slowly and build up to like that full big journey. And so you wouldn't catch me tomorrow booking an ayahuasca ceremony. But I do know people who are brave enough to do that. But I would just tiptoe into that world personally.
There's a lot of energy. And if you can develop that sensitivity, the whole idea is that you don't need that eventually, that you can access those parts without something else, but everybody's journey is different. I'm not gonna. It's not a like a written textbook thing. That's not how this process works. Everyone has spirit guides. Everyone has a process. just be careful with this stuff because there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of things that you need to learn before you go jumping into a bunch of psychedelics. Because if you don't have that background framework of understanding, some spirits think it's funny to scare you. They laugh at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tend to in in my dreams, I tend to have I have a very vivid imagination. I have a very vivid like visualization that goes on, and there are dreams that I have that feel so real where like I feel like in my late 30s, like sometimes I still wake up terrified, like those night terrors that kids tend to get. And that's why I'm so tedious about psychedelics because I know that my imagination is on another level. And my visualization is on another level. So I know that I will be able to fully imagine something dark and scary. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, that's the part where we be compassionate with ourselves and try not to push it away and just kind of hold it and ask for help in dealing with whatever that vision was. You're wanting to ask for the energetic and spiritual help to discern that. Because if you push it away, that's almost like oh, I'm scared, I can't deal with that. But you want to approach it slowly and carefully so you don't scare the crap out of yourself.
And that's where you have a guide too, right?
Yeah.
So you don't just go on that journey by yourself usually, with the heavier hitting stuff like ayahuasca
Right.
and,
Right.
whatever else. Well, is there anything that is going on for you now? Where can people get in touch with you to be a coach, or is anything in the works for you?
I have guidance sessions for sale on my website. I have my book on sale and it's also on Amazon. I post a lot on YouTube. I've been doing more podcasts, and for me, it's not just spiritual. Like the last podcast I did was about homeschooling. I'm kind of a progressive mom. I like to do things a little bit differently. Things that take a little bit of inner strength. My child's father passed away and he ended up not going to school for 2 years on purpose so he could heal and grow. So I just talk about some of the, more unique and individual things that I do that I know a lot of people want to do, but you have to, a lot of times you talk to someone who does this, who has a little more confidence in it, who's been doing it a long time, and you just pick up little things. Um, I am all about us with everything and all of the negativity that's going on is developing that inner strength, you know? And sometimes you need to hear all the time, okay, that's too much screen time, or I'm listening too much to other people. At this time, with all this crazy stuff going on, I am trying to inspire people to take hold of their energetic reactions, And that doesn't mean, especially for women, that doesn't mean crying. Some women need to cry it out. We've been hearing don't cry forever. I've spent years crying about my trauma, trying to process it so I can be stronger and move forward. So we have to dig into this emotional regulation stuff. Everybody should be doing some sort of spiritual practice at this point with the way the world is. Get on a spiritual path of any kind. I do have a couple funny videos about my spiritual urgings, on there and just trying to tap into my own creativity and had to start stepping out of my comfort zone too. I took singing lessons, which was something that I wouldn't have ever done because I was so focused on my kids. And right now in my part of life, my kids are older and I'm just creating my own life. So I'm not a helicopter mom trying to fulfill herself through her children.
Thing. I'm really happy for you, and I felt this just huge sense of just excitement for you to be doing those things
Yeah.
that to set aside time to, take singing lessons and all of those things that we all kind of think about and we put out there, but sometimes we don't circle back to. So that's amazing. And what is your YouTube handle so people can find you on there?
It's at the Angel Wears Prana 1869. Put it in that email for you.
Oh,
And it's all,
awesome.
if you go to theangelwearsprana.com, I have the buttons that take you to
All the
the
links to
different,
everything.
yeah. I have a resource page on my website too. For beginners who are just looking for easy ways to step into how you know yourself, just free links. I have a blog too where I write about things that excite me just on a deeper level, and that's what I got.
I think it's awesome. I think you're an awesome and engaging writer too, because I was looking at your blog and I was just like, I like the way you write. It's very
Thank you.
conversational, and I love writing that feels like I'm talking to you while I'm reading it. So I really like that. So everyone,
Well,
don't
thank you.
forget to stop by the angelwearsprana.com and say hi to Anya over there and follow her links to YouTube and her coaching sessions and pick up her book online. Anya, thank you so much for chatting with me today. This has
Thank
been super
you. What a great
awesome.
alignment for today.
It has been, and I'm excited, and I know we can go for another hour, so we might have to have another session at one point. Thank you so much. And this has been Northern Arizona Witches Podcast. Thank you all for visiting. Love and light to y'all.
Namaste.